Happy Wednesday night, everyone. Welcome to Deep in the Plus. This is the show where we go deep into the Disney Plus catalog. We find something to talk about, and tonight we're going to be talking about the original 1941 Dumbo. If you have not already, please subscribe to WDWNT TV for more great content. And, of course, give us a thumbs up as it helps people to find us. And we have pulled in the big guns tonight. My friends, it is my good friend, Maleko. How are you?
Hey, Rob, how are you? Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Untrue, sir. This is untrue. Maleko is on location in Hawaii, and I always appreciate having you on, my friend. I know that usually your partner, Lauren, joins in with you, and I'm sure that the wife will have some words about the fact that you stayed late at work instead of going home to do the show with her, but the show must go on, right?
It must. And, of course, it's 9 p.m. in the East Coast, but here in Hawaii it's just 4 o'clock. So I'm still technically on the clock here, but just taking my late lunch break today. So,
well, I appreciate it, man. Sorry about that. Island life, I guess. Hey, so you and I have done a bunch of reviews, some just you and I, some with Lauren. We did a lot of stuff from like the 80s. We did Fox and the Hound, and we did Oliver and Company. And then at one point you had a weird pick for like Mary Poppins. And so you and I were talking about what can we do next. And I know you had a list of stuff, and I was like, we did that one. We did that one. You were like, Dumbo. I was like, It's 100 Years of Wonder. It's one that I wouldn't normally go back to because I find it sad. But I was like, you know what? Let's do Dumbo. But let me ask you, why? Why? What's your tie to Dumbo that you were like, yeah, let's do that one?
It's weird. When we're talking about the types of Disney movies that you want to review, I instantly go back to when I was watching Disney movies, my childhood. And it was that time period when Disney was releasing their first round of rentals on I guess it was VHS tape then. So like early 1980s, late 1970s. And Dumbo was one of those releases that for some reason or another, I saw it a lot as a kid. And so when I think of Disney movies as a kid, Dumbo is one of those that immediately evokes childhood memories for me.
Well, okay.
I'm
Sorry about that.
On screen.
No. You were like, yeah, I was expecting it to ebb and flow. It's fine.
Yeah.
So, no, and again, it's 100 years of the Disney company. This was the fourth animated feature they did. They had 5 that they kind of worked on together, starting with Snow White. Snow White was where they were all in on Snow White. And then they had Pinocchio and Fantasia and Dumbo and Bambi. And Fantasia and Pinocchio didn't do so great at the box office, and so they were like, hey, we got to get this next movie out pretty fast. The war in Europe was already underway. It was 1941. They started this development in 1940 and got this thing out in the end of 1941, which is kind of amazing. And in between, Disney threw a strike. I mean, this is like, there's a lot of stuff between the war, the strike, the flops, the rise and fall that were happening during the time of that we never think about. What I always think about with this movie is the baby mine sad moment. That's what I think about. So I mean,
for me, honestly, the same thing. When I think about my childhood, all of that is lost on me. In 1980, 81, I'm not thinking about World War II, or all of the struggles that Disney was going through at the time. It was just, this is an animated feature that was entertaining enough as a kid. It was short enough that we could watch it several times. You could watch it while you're waiting for something to happen at the house. So
right.
it was the kind of movie that would just pop up over and over again for us.
Well, short is accurate. When I sat down to watch it, I was like, "Oh my gosh, 64 minutes!" And it varies. Where some places says 63, some says 64, and I was like, "That can't possibly be right. How did all of that happen in like 63, 64 minutes?" And I thought, well, this must be the shortest Disney movie of all the full-length animated features. And guess what? It's not. I bet you don't know what the shortest full-length Disney animated feature is.
Not the shortest short, or the shortest full-length feature. I always thought this was it.
Well, there are 62 now with Wish in that list, and they started doing the package movies after this, like Fun and Fancy Free, Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, and all those. But the shortest one is one called Saludos Amigos, which is actually only 42 minutes long.
Oh, wow.
Probably not the one that you went to first. I don't think that was available for rent in the 80s. They brought it back later when Disney was, classic. It's not one I go to a lot, but it is the shortest one. But I was surprised it wasn't this.
Yeah, that surprised me too. Actually, I thought going into this, I would have that little factoid for you, but here I am, knowing nothing
Womp
again.
womp. I screwed it up. I'm sorry. Um, let's before we talk about this movie, let's talk about the fact that it's very problematic in 2024, and for so many reasons. You and I were talking about this before, and it's like, well, let's get into this. There's a
Yeah.
big disclaimer that I mean, I wasn't really prepared for the disclaimer at the beginning. I know that there's some, like Peter Pan is on there
Mhm.
and has a song called "What Makes
Yeah.
the Red Man Red," and I'm just like, how did we leave this in there and then not acknowledge "Song of the South"? But there's this big disclaimer on here that says, "Hey, this wasn't okay then. It's not okay now." But to
Mhm.
kind of show and not whitewash history, here it is. And part of me thinks that's great, and the other part of me goes, I'm a little bit about that. I don't know how you feel about that.
For me, I think it's really an advanced move for Disney. I know for a short period of time, either they did or they had discussed whether or not they were going to remove these from their library. I know Peter Pan, Dumbo, Jungle Book. There's a couple of others that just were going to vanish from the digital library because of the racial undertones and because of the things that were just blatant in some of them, not even undertones, just right flat
Yeah.
out there racism. But I think what they did here is, because you can't just pretend like I didn't see Dumbo when I was a kid. Like that just doesn't,
Right.
that you can't just make that go away. But what you can do is, maybe as an adult, is you can present this as a child, let the child appreciate it for the cartoon that it is, and then, have a discussion about racism, have a discussion about how it wasn't okay then, but this is how people were able to just put it into mainstream media.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important part of discussing, how racism affects children today versus us as adults.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I give props to them for doing that. There's a lot of these movies that when you go into it has some kind of warning like, hey, there's smoking in this. I know there was a time in Disney's history where they would take Gaucho Goofy who was smoking a cigarette and they'd animate it out. And so, the fact that a lot of this was, it was accepted and now we can look back on it and learn from it, I think is a good thing. And then the fact that these are kind of, shown as they were created. I think that
Hmm.
you're right. It does open up opportunity for a conversation, and I do appreciate that. There is still Song of the South is the only one that I know that they're like, it's too,
Yeah,
we can't.
that one's gone.
Yeah,
Yeah, but this movie was in an important time in Disney's history. You mentioned that it was the fourth movie that had come out. They rushed it out, and my
yeah,
understanding is it was at a time when Disney really needed a hit. They needed the money, and so for him to be able to produce this movie, I think it was under $1 million, $700,000 at the time. I think is what I saw that he spent on it, and then to turn this into a hit like it was. That's an important part of the Disney story. And
yeah.
so if it vanished from the library, it's like, how do you tell the Disney story and not, the animated show that turned into a feature that saved the company?
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. But beyond that, I find other problems with this one. The fact that the lead mother is called Mrs. Jumbo, and then the fact that they would call the kid Dumbo, and then that's the moniker for the movie. That's pretty big time. And then the fact that like now we have a completely different mindset about what a circus is. And
Mm.
so like when you see this circus as a kid now and you go, wait, that's not a circus. A circus is jugglers and stuntmen and like there's no animals in the circus anymore. What are you talking about? That's crazy. And so again, there's a lot of things about this that have changed over time. So
Yeah, you're right. And, when I was talking to a colleague of mine earlier saying, hey, I'm going to be discussing Dumbo on a podcast today, He joked and he said, "Oh, that's going to be great. Two adult men talking about a children's movie," which on a surface level, it's weird. But when you think about a movie like this, that, you know, as an adult, you really get to go back and think about what you were taught as children. And bullying was just part of everyday life, and in this movie, bullying is the main theme. This kid is this elephant is bullied from the time he's a kid all the way to the end of the movie. So much so that they named the movie his bully nickname. That's not okay.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's not. And again, she's Mrs. Jumbo, which
Yeah.
is already a problem. And then we go ahead and make it Dumbo. So there's that. Again, there's just a lot of things in a very small package, in a 64-minute package. We're dealing with a lot here. However, one of the things that you talked about was the money. Obviously, going back and watching some behind the scenes of that era, there was a lot of these that were works of art. And again, Pinocchio, the background seems so accurate and realistic and just amazing animation. And the same things with the symphony that was Fantasia, and even like the lifelike movements of Bambi. This one really, they went back to their roots of almost animated shorts to make this movie, because the animation, while some of it is, it's good animation, but there's a lot of it that I'm watching and I'm seeing, like Timothy's facial expression. Like if he's far away, it's just two dots and a circle for his face. Like there's a lot of little things like that I just look at and go, the animation is not what I would expect from Disney, especially around that time under Walt's rule. But at the same time, he needed a win, as we talked about, and this movie has more emotion in the animation that has I feel like than the other four movies put together. The emotion is there and is real, which again makes me usually not pick this one to throw on while I'm like, cooking dinner or whatever.
Yeah,
So
I agree with that. This one pulls at the heartstrings. Really, it's a tearjerker, even as an adult, when you think about how sad this life is for Dumbo. And his mom. We'll get into that, I guess, as we go through the movie. But one of the things that I noticed about the animation is that, like you said, they did seem to take shortcuts here and there. I mean, notwithstanding the 10-minute acid trip that happened in the movie for no reason. Anything else in the movie is plainly animated, but the animals look great. Dumbo really has a lot of expression, and Dumbo really has, a lot of feelings and flavor to him. And I really like the way that Dumbo's animated. And I think that's probably why the movie has some standing power.
yeah, and again, it's not bad animation. It's just that I think there are some pieces of it that I look at and go, they could have done better, or things that look like they repeat.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I was reading something else about it, but like people talking about the problems of the movie, and they were talking about when it opens up that it's dark and scary for no particular reason. Like, why was it
really
dark and
is.
scary?
I forgot about the opening, and as it opened up and this poetic, stormy weather story comes out, you're like, oh my God, who's he talking about? What's going to appear? And then it breaks into happy music, and here comes the storks. You're just like, what? Really?
Yeah.
Was that necessary?
Talking about snow and hail and lightning crash and all that stuff, and
And
yeah,
there's this narrator, and he goes through storms, and nothing will hold him back, and it's coming soon. And you're just like, oh my gosh, what's happening?
you're like, right. Again, it's been so long since I've seen this that I was like, what is this? And then, like you said, the acid trip at the end, which we will definitely talk about. Like, what is that? But it's also, in addition to it being short, it's very concise in its storytelling. And I watched a little bit. There's an extra attached to this if you watch it on Disney Plus, which is sort of the making of Dumbo. And they talk about how the guys who wrote it would give Walt a chapter at a time and kind of leave him wanting more. And so when they wrote this, they wrote it in such a concise way that, unlike Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, where they tried a bunch of scenes and animated a bunch of scenes that didn't actually get used, this one was written and then made as written because they were on a timetable. It was already very short. And so, they put it together like that. But it does seem very out of left field to have this opening, dark, sinister opening with the verse like written, like I'm listening to it going, what are we doing? And on top of that, there's not a lot of audio. I mean, speaking in this movie. There's not a lot of dialogue, is the word I was struggling for in this movie in general. Yeah, it's a big word, I know. Dumbo doesn't speak at all, and like the elephants that are like the old hens, they kind of talk a little bit. Not one word.
I just saw this movie last night. He doesn't speak at all.
Not one word. What are you doing? What did you think?
I thought he
quick,
like,
rattle off all your favorite Dumbo quotes. Go, rattle them off. All the ones you love. Just tell me. I want to hear them all.
I don't know. I thought for sure he talked back to the mouse.
Nope, no. You don't talk back to the mouse. You do not talk back to the mouse.
That is crazy. Timothy Mouse is really the boss of this movie.
Oh, heck yeah. So when it opens up with that scary scene, and then we go to the storks, and the storks are dropping babies, and storks are dropping babies. It's so weird to me.
There's this whole song about where babies come from. They come from the stork. And it's like, okay, we're going with that story. All right.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second, because there was a line, and I wrote this down. There was a line in the stork song. Right? Yeah, in the stork song.
Go on.
Yeah. I'm desperately looking for. Hang on a second.
I'm trying to think if I remember it before you.
It says, "Don't try to get away. He'll find you in the end." Yeah. Like he's Freddy Krueger. It's the stork is.
It is. He's
coming for you, man. That stork is coming for you.
It is a warning that about having sex as a young adult. Maybe it's something saying you don't want to be caught having a baby. Watch out. I don't know. I didn't understand it. I mean, I've heard the stork story before, but it wasn't ever something that was explained to me. So I don't know where the stork lines came from, but it's just weird.
He's just the guy that has
that was lost in 1941.
He's just the guy that brings the plastic pickles. That's all I knew. Yep, that's old guy stuff. You got to go look it up.
To the stork there.
Yep. Yeah. So But here's the other thing that was bothering me with the stork is that as the stork is just dropping babies, like Mrs. Jumbo is like going, there's supposed to be one for me, and so she's like leaning left and leaning right to try to find hers, and then at the last minute it pulls away to the other side. She's like, that one's not mine, and then it's like, that one's not mine either. Yeah. So they said when the stork finally brings her her baby, he makes a speech about like which one of you is expecting. So I guess like that's maybe the genesis of the word expecting. I don't know, like to use in terms of a baby. Like, are you expecting the stork to bring you something?
You're expecting the stork? Yeah.
Also, can you imagine running this circus and then like in the middle of the night your animal supply doubles?
All of the animals were delivered in one night. Tigers, bears, everything except the elephant, because apparently the elephant stork was a special delivery because he has his own thing. He even did a special service for the baby. Nothing that was provided to the bears, by the way. The bear's baby just unraveled itself and curled up with mom. He didn't get the whole song and dance.
No, the happy birthday song. No. And Sterling Holloway voices the stork who delivers Mrs. Jumbo's baby. Sterling Holloway, famously the voice of Winnie the Pooh. And it's really neat to see him in this movie. But it makes me feel like that at Disney at that time, they just were like, who's in the building today? Sterling? Let's get him down here to voice something. Very random. But I do like the fact that he sings Happy Birthday, and I count that as one of the songs in this. So they pack up and
it's a beautiful rendition, and you can hear the Winnie the Pooh in his voice, which is really cool.
Yes. He also did Kaa in Jungle Book.
Oh,
So anyway, um, that next thing we see is that like the train is all packed up and heading out of town as the circus would be apt to do, and the train is Casey Jr., which again, I don't know how familiar you were with Casey Jr. Obviously, there's the Casey Jr. song in this one, but I don't know that there was probably a time in my life where I didn't know that Casey Jr. was from Dumbo. But now, like when I go to Disneyland and you see the Dumbo attraction, the Casey Jr. train's right behind it. I mean, it's big IP out of this movie.
yeah, that's one of the things that I forgot the connection until I saw the movie last night, and I was like, that. I don't think I remembered that those were connected in any way. So it was actually kind of cool to see that, and then I had to think which came first. Was there another short that had Casey, or is this it? Is this the origin of Casey? And,
I
and I
think
guess
this
it
is.
is.
But they also write it in as like the little engine that could story, because as he's going up the
Yeah.
hill, he's like, I think I can. And then he goes down, he's like, I knew I could. I'm like, wait, that's a different story, the little engine that could. I feel like that's not,
Yeah.
I feel like we're throwing too much like MCU intertwined universe into this thing. But Casey Jr. We'll talk at the end a little bit about the park and the attractions, because I feel like that's kind of a genesis of this movie. But and it also shows how important this was to the company. But it is like Casey Jr. is a big deal in this in this part, and has his own song. And then there's Casey at Bat, which is nothing having to do with any of this. So,
Right.
but
It's different.
but again, you've got the weird dark opening. You've got the whole thing about the storks, and then you've got the whole Casey Jr. thing, and then of course again the fever dream that we'll talk about at the end, all in an hour.
Yeah.
it's it's insane.
You could almost lay out the storyboards the way that they probably had them laid out at Disney Animation. As you go through the movie, even if you were to fast forward it on your screen, you could almost clip this storyboard goes here. Okay, we got storm. Okay, here's storks. Here's train. There's probably like 12 of them, and then that suddenly becomes this 60-minute movie. And if they had more time, if they had more money, I'm sure there would have been a lot of editing, and I'm sure there would have been a lot of redesign. That opening scene has to go. Maybe the train is a little less animated, and maybe, to the detriment of ever having Casey again, some of those elements would have just kind of, because they're not important to the storyline. They're just extra stuff.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, but again, there are movies and probably classic Disney movies where I'll get bored at a little bit, like a song, or it'll be a little bit. I'll get a little bit, just a little bored, because pacing on these older movies is not what we're used to in 2024. Where you and I are
Yeah.
that MTV generation where it was like everything's fast, 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 and it's like, well, now we don't want to watch slow stuff, and that's why George Lucas goes back and puts extra features and special editions and things like that to make sure that it keeps our attention. But honestly, I didn't feel that in this movie because there's so much packed in such a small package that they kept moving and moving. Speaking of package, this was a weird thing to me, that whoever wrapped this baby up knew the ears were going to be a problem, because they clearly
Right.
had them tucked behind him so we don't see him until he sneezes. And I'm like, oh, it's too late to return to Cinder. The stork already left. You can't give him back and get your money back. But it's like it's for the big reveal. I get that, but also it looks like somebody back at HQ, Stork HQ, was like, "Oh, this is gonna be a problem. Well, just tuck
This
them."
could be a problem.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the big reveal is actually it's really well done. I think you see him and you think, oh, he's a cute baby. Even the other elephants are remarking what a cute baby, which then in turn leads to their bullying him. But it's the reveal where he blows his nose and they pop out. That's one of my favorite. I visualized that from when I was a kid. I remember that moment.
yeah. No, I get that. A sidebar. I don't. This distracted me a little bit. I don't know. Did not know there were so many different eye colors for elephants in nature. Because we have a teal and we have a blue and an orange and like a dark yellow. So, just a little. That's a little strange to me. I don't know why you do that. I guess to differentiate them, but that comes into play later because Mrs. Jumbo has blue eyes, just like Dumbo. But when she goes and becomes the mad elephant later, when she's protecting him, her eyes are red. Her eyes are red. So I was like, oh, good call. Anyway, these are the random little things that I notice when I'm rewatching a movie, as you said, as an adult man watching a children's movie, passing judgment on it. Well, that can't be real.
You know, you got to look at their kids' eyes. Kids didn't even notice the eye colors. I got to be honest, I didn't notice the eye colors.
Because you're a kid at heart, my friend, a kid at heart.
Perhaps.
Let's talk about the physical labor that they put these animals through to put up their tents. And there doesn't seem to be any guidance. It's almost like when they go from town to town, they already know what their job is to put up the tents. I don't remember ever seeing animals do this before. So that part is interesting to me. But again, from of the time, there's a song that goes along with this that is also very not good in 2024.
Yeah. Well, before we get to the song, I want to go back to the elephants helping the work.
Okay.
I did spend some time. I drove through Florida once, and I got to stop at the Barnum and Bailey Circus Museum. And while you're there, you get to learn a little bit about the history of the museum. And elephants were actually a big part of the work that was being done to put up the circuses, just like they show you in the movie here, where they're putting up the tents and things like that. They actually were part of that, as were the horses. And so there were other things that were in the circus that, while they're there to be show animals, they're also there to help with the work. And so they were dual purpose back then in that. So to be able to see that, I was like, oh, that probably is pretty much what it looked like.
Well, and yeah, I totally get that, but also the fact that they just do it on their own. There doesn't seem to be any anybody guiding them.
Guiding them.
Well, yeah, it was a little bit of a thing.
Busy singing this super racist song.
Oh my gosh, dude! I was like, okay, I know the crows are a problem, and the crows are in the end, and I know that's a problem.
I was expecting the crows.
Right, exactly. And so as we're going through, and it's this we work all day, we work all night, we never learn to read or write. We're happy-hearted roustabouts. Like what? I was unaware.
Yeah, roustabouts. I had to look up the word roustabouts. It means what you think it means. But
yeah,
the whole song is, at first you're like, okay, these are just hardworking people. I get it. And then by the end of the song, you're like, oh no, this is a specific kind of work that's being done here. This is slave labor. And that really kind of was like, wow, this is okay in 1941.
Well, and there's a lot of things though about this movie is to think about, the idea of like, say, Nazi Germany. It seems so like that must have been an eon ago, and to think this movie was made during that time, that's crazy. That is absolutely crazy to think that a piece of this was made during a time when all that was happening in the world. And so it really makes the world feel smaller in general. But yeah, it does feel like we should have been past that at this point. And they're so careful in everything that they do now at Disney with, making sure that they bring on consultants and that everything is true to how it is. And I think maybe, part of it is just trying to make sure that they don't repeat issues that they had in the past. So yeah, it caught me off guard. It did. The next thing that happens though is that they have a parade in town when the circus comes to town. And this is a thing that I remember as a kid. The ringmaster's leading the way. They have like the trains that they're bringing in. Everybody's come to town to see the circus come to town. This is a thing that like my grandfather took me downtown Washington D.C. and they would offload the train and then like do like a little parade down to the civic center where the parade or the circus was going to be, and it was kind of a show unto itself, like a great marketing to say, hey, these are all the things you're going to see. And at the same time, it was one of these where like, you get to you get to get hyped up as a kid for the circus coming. But in this one, all the animals are just kind of tired of it. They're like, it's another town. We're doing this thing again. Um,
Yeah.
but the funniest bit to me was, in Aladdin, there's that whole bit with the genie going, talking about the camels, and he says, "Watch out, they spit." And in this one, there are
Yes.
camels, and immediately I said to my wife, I was like, "Watch out, they spit." And there's literally a bit that they do with that, where the camel like looks like he's about to spit, and then he realizes he can't in this crowd, and then he like swallows it. And I was like, oh, okay, this is a thing that actually is known and happens. But everything I ever needed to know, I learned from Disney movies, right? I learned it all from Aladdin. I didn't know I needed to go back to the source material of Dumbo.
That's funny. You know what? I saw that bit and I thought, oh, that's funny. I know that they spit, and I know that they spit because I watched Aladdin. So amazing,
And
amazing.
if you go to the Aladdin attraction at Walt Disney World, they have the spitting camels from the old Aladdin parade that sit out in front of it and spit. So, yeah.
Oh, fun.
Um, so at this point, everything's fine and dandy in the Jumbo household, and he's kind of getting into the whole thing about the circus and trying to become a part of everything. And Mrs. Jumbo is like, she's gonna break him into the biz. And then these kids. It's always a group of ne'er do well children that ruin everything. They come in and they start making fun of Dumbo. And honestly, this animation reminds me so much of Pinocchio. The kid looks very much like the kids that go to Pleasure Island in Pinocchio. So I
And
don't
the
know if
kid
they
who's making all the fun,
has
he's
big
in no
ears.
position to be making fun. He's got the big ears and the goofy teeth and the funny nose, and it's like, boy, you're making fun of people. People should be making fun of you,
You're like, look
goofy
in the
looking
mirror,
kid.
fella. Look in the
Yeah,
mirror
he's
first.
redhead. He's got buck teeth. Probably got a lot going
Uh,
for him.
Well, he starts messing with Dumbo, and Mama don't like that, and so she starts to kind of go on a rampage, which makes me feel sad because it's like it's out of context. They don't understand that like the kids were like messing with her boy. But this is what I was talking about. You can see her eyes are red when she's going mad there. So um, and just a scene before that they were blue. And so this is where she's going to get separated from him, and she goes to the mad elephant paddock, which they seem to have
Yeah,
ready to go, like the timeout chamber, uh, which they have
yeah,
up on a
mad
hill.
elephant.
Yeah, it's
Which is
it's
which is
scary.
really that happened. I mean, I don't know if you remember Tyke, the elephant from Hawaii that went crazy at the circus, and they actually ran out of the circus and wound up running through the streets. They wound up having to put him down. I think it's Tyke is the name of the elephant. My wife would know. She actually rode on the elephant a couple days before the incident happened. But it's one of those when you see those caught on camera TV shows, and they talk about wild events that happen. This one is always one that pops up. It's the elephant that broke loose from the circus and is running through the streets of Honolulu.
Wow, I did not know that. There's a lot to unpack there about Lauren Bean riding an elephant. I feel like that's a conversation we need to have at some point. Maybe we need to do
Perhaps it
a
is.
follow up with like the live action Dumbo or elephant or Operation Dumbo Drop or something, so I can work that into the conversation. So I heard you were riding an elephant days before it went crazy. Yeah.
Fun story.
Speaking
Yeah.
speaking of them going crazy, like there's this scene with Timothy Mouse where he comes in and he freaks them out because the story is that elephants are afraid of mice, and yet that's kind of the irony of the relationship between Dumbo and Timothy is that his best friend is the thing that all the elephants fear. What's the subtext there? Break it down for me, Maleko.
Oh, I mean, I don't know that it's that deep, really. I mean, you've got, here's Dumbo the outcast. Here's a mouse that, again, for whatever reason, is also an outcast. And it just makes sense that the two of them would find each other and, and become a thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think the way that they played Timothy Mouse in this movie was really what carried the movie. There's not, I mean, like you said, there's no talking otherwise, But even the talking that the ringmaster does, it's gruff and very adult and very hard to understand as a kid, I imagine.
Yeah.
And then you have Timothy Mouse, who's really just super friendly and helpful, and for all for all surface, you know, for what we can tell, anyway, it looks like he really is genuinely looking for a friend, and so it's nice to have that nice introduction of him, because up until this point, the movie's a lot of drama, and
Yeah.
Dumbo could really use a hand.
True. That is true. You were talking about, we were talking about there's not a lot of talking in here. Looking at the voices, there's not a lot of people I recognize either. Like, and I get that we're talking about a movie that is, what, 85 years old? Is that right? Am I doing the math somewhat correctly there? And so a lot of these pictures are black and white, because a lot of these people passed away around that time. But Sterling Holloway is in here as the voice of the stork, but says was uncredited in the movie. It looks like everyone was uncredited in the movie, and I'm thinking back on it now,
Yeah.
and when it opened up, it was really about who were the animators, who were who were the storyboards, who wrote the thing, and it's a very quick introduction, credits at the beginning.
Yeah, it's
So
a one card slate that says RKO Pictures, the animators, and I think the writers, and then they show it again at the end. I was looking for the credits. They wound up showing credits in another language, which I think was for the voice acting, but the original credit included just that one card, which I remember just strikingly had RKO Pictures kind of on it, and some of the other Disney credits. But yeah, none of the voices or characters seem to have a credit to them.
yeah, and I think that in these older movies they used to do credits at the beginning, which again they do some, just not of voice actors or everything. They would do credits at the beginning, and then at the end it's like the end, and like you said, like the RKO card, and then we're out. So a lot of times when I'm watching a movie now, if it's like Avengers or something, and it says it's 2 hours and 40 minutes, and I can see the little bar, I know that the last 10 minutes of it are going to be credits, in credit scenes, and who dubbed this in German. Like, I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, but this was a true like 64 minutes. Like when it hits the end, we're kind of done. But
Yeah.
the only other name I recognize is Jimmy McDonald, who was like one of the voices of Mickey Mouse. It was Walt and Jimmy McDonald. He played a roaring lion uncredited. So again, not a lot of talking. There were the clowns were apparently voiced by the same dude, Jack Mercer. And then the boy that we saw there, that you were making fun of, was Harold Manley, voice of the boy. And then there are not many voices or things in here. So again, the cast is kind of not a thing for me in this, other than Sterling Holloway, which I thought was pretty cool. The music, we kind of, again, we talked a little bit about that, the Roustabout song, and like, what? But I mean, there are other things like the Casey Jr. song, which I think is a big deal. And Baby Mine that's the tearjerker. That's the one where Timothy brings Dumbo up to the Mad Elephant cart to see his mom, and she can't reach him, and he can't quite reach her. So she puts her trunk out and rocks him, and it's heartbreaking. I mean, that's again that emotion that comes out of this movie, and that's the one where you're just like, I'm not crying, man. You're crying. That's not me. Were you crying? Were you crying just a little bit?
I had wet eyes. I did. It was something in my eye. I don't know what it was, but it was. It's a touching moment, and because again, as the audience, you recognize that she's not crazy, that she's not a mad elephant, that it was really just a circumstance of what was happening, and that mother-son connection. Again, we talked about this before. It's that Disney trope. You don't really have a Disney character until one of their parents dies or is taken away from them. And so it starts here as early as Dumbo, where they take away his mother to make him a hero.
Yeah, Care Bear is in chat and was said, Mama Jumbo doesn't speak at all either, right? I think she does, like right around the time of her getting the baby. I think she says a line or two, because I think I was listening for that a little bit as well. But Dumbo definitely does not speak.
I don't know that she does. Again, I'm thinking, I don't remember what she says. I know the other elephants talk because they're making fun of Dumbo.
I
Interesting.
swear
It'd be
I
an
thought she
interesting
said
choice
something.
if she doesn't say anything.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that may be the case, but I really thought that she did. I know that there's several of the elephants, like Prissy, the elephant, and then the elephant matriarch, as she's listed here. I don't know that they necessarily name all of them in there, but yeah, I mean that. I thought she said something because yeah, she does because the and I was going to use this as a trivia question, but I won't. She says to or the stork says what when he's singing Happy Birthday is like, what did you name it? And she
Oh,
says
right.
Jumbo Junior. So she's the one that says
She
Jumbo Junior.
does.
Yeah.
Boy, that would have been a
So
great trivia question.
uh womp womp. Um, all right. So for you guys who are watching, thank you guys for watching. Give us a thumbs up if you haven't already. Tell a friend. We love having you guys hanging out. I'm watching a little bit in the in the chat here. Jarrett says they're like the Kardashians gossiping. Yeah, they're the worst.
Yeah.
But I do want to ask you a couple trivia questions about this, my friend. And I tried to make them fairly easy because I feel like you're not paying
Because
a
of
ton of
my
attention.
level. Because I fail at these trivia questions every time you do
It's
the
all in
show?
good fun, my friend.
Yes.
It's all in good fun. So I was going to ask you what she named the baby, but obviously it's Jumbo Jr. When it opens up, this is easy. This is easy. Just, no problem at all. When it opens up and they're dropping the babies, where are they dropping them to? Where do we see them dropping them to?
Florida. They're dropping
That
in
is
Florida.
correct.
Specifically, it looks like they're in like St. Petersburg, kind of in the west coast of Florida.
Yep. When the stork is looking at his map and trying to figure out where they might be, he highlights one of the routes on the map. What route is that he highlights?
Oh, I don't know. I thought he looks at the train. I don't remember what the route is.
61.
Ah,
Which I think is weird because if I'm remembering correctly, I feel like isn't it that odd numbers go north to south and even numbers go east to west?
oh, I don't know. I don't know. In
Because
Hawaii, we just put them wherever we can. Oh, there you go, 61.
yeah, which is not Route 66, but 61.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which turns into
but
75, it looks like, yeah.
but like I-95 goes down the East Coast, and then Route 40 and Route 66 go east to west. So I think that's the rule, is that even numbers go east to west and odd numbers go north to south.
You could be
Anyway,
right.
I tried to be. I tried to be at all times as right as possible and not spew just
And
nothingness.
if not, they're going to let you know right in the comments. Right,
Right
down
in the
there.
comments.
Just
In the comments. No, Rob, that's not how it works.
incorrect.
So when the clowns are trying to up their game, they had Dumbo at the we kind of have not gotten to that point yet in the story and talking about it, but he screws up big. They're going to do this pachyderm pyramid, and he screws up big, and he trips over his ears, and then everybody hates him, and they decide to relegate him to the clowns. He's been made a clown, and then the elephants disown him in a nasty little ceremony, and so he's a clown, and he jumps out of a building that's on fire, and the clowns mention how high that is. How high is that original jump?
It's 40 feet. And they want to double it to 80 feet.
It's 20, and then want to double
Wait.
it to 40, and then 80, and then 100, and then 1,000. But it's 20 when it starts. But you heard it, so you knew what I was talking about,
I
right?
heard it. He says 80. It's simple math. But okay, maybe it was 20.
When they meet the crows and they say that the elephant can fly, the crows make fun of him by mentioning 3 things that they know can fly.
Oh, yeah. I've seen a
What
horse
are those
fly.
3?
Or a house fly. I've seen a house fly.
Yep.
I've seen a dragonfly.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
I
And
mean, maybe a horse fly, but they also talk about, how I've seen a vegetable truck, and I've seen, they have all these fun things that they go into. It's actually a fun little song.
no, you hit him. You hit him. It was, I've seen a horse fly, I've seen a dragonfly, and I've seen a house fly, but I've never seen an elephant fly.
Never seen an Elephant fly.
And it's so funny. It's so funny. Like, I've never thought of the flies in those terms before. Like, I've seen a house fly. Wait, what? Like, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. And it was in Up, I remember. But yeah. So here's the last one. Actually, two more. One is, what is Timothy's middle initial? You should know that.
T. It's Timothy T. Mouse.
No.
J. Mouse.
No. It's worth a lot in Scrabble, if that helps.
S. Mouse.
Q.
X.
Timothy Q. Mouse.
Q. Ah, how did I miss that?
They actually
you see his signature at one point too.
and it's a cursive, like the one that looks like a 2, like that. It's a cursive.
Oh, see, that's
Q.
why I thought it was a T. There you go, because it's one of those weird Qs.
Sorry, I thought you were gonna nail that one. I thought I was like lobbing up a softball on that one. I really did. The last one
that's
is
the story of my life.
The last one is, you could probably adjust for context. In the newspaper headlines at the very end, they say that Dumbo's ears are now insured for how much money?
$1 million.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Ears
$1
insured
million.
for $1 million bucks.
Yes, because that's a thing they used to do back in there. So yeah. Ronald in chat's going, I wonder what the Q was. I don't know. I think it's like
Q.
like
Quincy?
Esquire, Quincy. I don't know. Yeah.
Quiet Mouse.
Sure.
Quiet Mouse. Oh, that'd be fun.
Oh, he's not quiet at all. We know he's the talker. But yeah. So anyway, that's it. You did. I feel like you got at least 50-50 there, right? You nailed the fly thing. You got the 1 million. You were on the right track for the 20 feet. You just were one bit after that one. And then the only other question I was going to ask you, and I don't know if you would know this or not, is, do you know what color Mrs. Jumbo wears?
I want to say blue. I don't know though.
It's blue with pink trim. You nailed it. There you go. See, you're a genius. You are a Dumbo connoisseur, sir, and you know everything about it.
Except for what's actually going on in the pink elephant scene, because I
let's get there.
know what that's all
Let's
about.
get there. Here's the thing. In my head, I thought this was, and I don't know if people are gonna make fun of me about this or not. I thought that was originally, when I was a kid, I thought that was from Winnie the Pooh, because of the heffalumps and woozles, because there's a trippy scene with heffalumps and woozles that is very similar to that. So for some reason, and it makes no sense, because pink elephants, not heffalumps, but pink elephants on parade. So I always thought this was originally from, like, I used to work at the Disney store. Remember when they had those in the mall, and they had Plush Mountain at the end, and we had the sing-alongs on loops all the time, and the pink elephants on parade would run through there. I honestly thought that's what it was from. And not that it was from Dumbo. So when we get to that point, not only is it trippy, but it's
Did
a
they play
long...
the pink elephants on parade on the video screen when they were playing the song?
Mm-hmm.
They did.
Mm-hmm.
That weird ass scene. That is so crazy. I actually, we talked about how we don't get bored in the movies. I actually got a little bored in the middle of the pink elephant scene. I found myself picking up my phone and going to Instagram. Like I don't know, it felt like 10 minutes into this scene. And so I was just like, how much, I mean, this elephant is tripping hard right now. Poor thing. It went on for a long time. So I was glad when it was over and they appear in the tree. But it felt like 10 minutes to me. How long is that scene? Do you know?
It's about 4 minutes. But it's about, I mean, it's for a 1 hour and 4 minute movie. Yeah, that's a long time. But yeah, it's about 4 minutes. It starts at about 46, it's after he gets all drunk and whatnot, and then right at about 50, it's maybe 4.5 minutes. Right at about 50 and
5 minutes.
a half.
That's an eternity. And and we didn't kind of explain what happens there. So apparently he drinks water that's been tainted with the absinthe that the clowns had been drinking. And so not only is he drunk, he's absinthe drunk, which is, gives him this psychedelic trip. straight out of a '60s movie, man. They were ahead of their time on this, you know. And I guess this is where you get so drunk you see pink elephants came from. I didn't know that, but I guess this is where the reference comes from. Or were they referencing something before that?
I feel like this is probably where it came from because like
Yeah.
why not? I don't know. But yeah, and I almost ask you like there's a scene where a bubble comes up, Timothy sees his reflection, he's like hugs it, and he goes, "Do you remember the name of the thing he says?" He says, "George." And he just like hugs it. And I was going to be like, "Oh, that's a question I should ask," but it's so fleeting in there. But yeah, even that scene though when they're drunk and they're not quite like and we're not in the
Tripping
pink
yet?
elephants thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Where they're messing
even
with
that
bubbles
scene's
and
a little
yeah,
trippy because he's like he hugs the balloon, hugs the bubble, and then like there's this it takes him away for some reason, and then he's like riding on another one, and yeah, I mean,
yeah.
it's kind of nuts that this thing was in here, and so if you add this scene onto that pink elephant thing, we're talking about maybe 20% of the movie at that point. Why? Why?
Really?
What is it?
It's just
What does this
bizarre.
add to it other than the fact that when it's all over, they wind up in a tree? Like like basically they black out and they show they wind up in a tree and they don't know how they got there and then Timothy figures out it's because they flew. And then they meet the crows and then the crows are
Right.
like they're like this
Teach them
they're
to
the
fly.
ones that teach him to fly. Like they're key in this because at this point I mean, it's not until the last 4 minutes of this movie that he actually flies.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you think this was a movie about an elephant flying? No, actually, it's not. He only flies for this much of the movie. In fact, he's drunk and high longer in this film than he's actually flying. So,
That is true. That is true. Yeah, and so he finally flies at the near the end of this thing, and he's got his little feather, and obviously
his
all is
magic
well
feather.
there. That's like
Yeah.
literally at the out 1 hour point of this movie. So I mean, it's
And there's 2 minutes
crazy.
left, 3 minutes left. Yeah.
It's crazy to
Crazy.
me that that's a thing, but it's again the crows are very smart in the fact that they are like, hey, we're gonna get psychology on you. Like, is that a word
Hmm.
that was thrown around in the 1940s? I don't know. We're gonna put psychology on you and say, here's this feather, give it to your boy, and he's gonna fly because it's
Yeah.
gonna be a magic
That was really
feather.
clever. The crows are,
Yeah.
are one of my favorite scenes in the movie, if not my favorite scene in the movie. Because they have a fun song. They're the ones that teach them how to fly. That whole thing where they're playing with words, where it's housefly and dragonfly, and that whole sequence there. There's more things that they put together that you're like, oh, I never thought of the word that way.
Yeah.
So they really do pick up the movie, and it really takes it home.
Well, and Ronald said the crows were outsiders like Dumbo, so they clicked. And Care Bear said it added fun for the animators. Yeah, Ward Kimball apparently was the one who animated the crows, and they had like body references. I think it was maybe the Jackson brothers, who were a vaudeville team, who gave like the
Oh,
reference
fun.
for all of this. It's in the making of that's attached to this, so you should watch that. But it's really kind of neat that they kind of ran with it, and the historian who was talking about it said that Ward Kimball really just plussed it, really just went above and beyond when he was animating all this. And yeah, it is fun and it does keep your attention. You're right, like I agree. I did kind of zone out a little bit with Pink Elephants going, how much
Yeah.
longer is left in this? We're almost over. Okay.
Yeah.
Why is this so long? Am I drunk? What's happening here? Um, yeah, that was kind of
But there
nuts.
was there's a fun moment where you meet the crows, and then Dumbo realizes he's in a tree, and he starts to fall down the tree. And you don't actually see Dumbo falling down the tree, but you see the crow's reaction to it. And every branch that he hits, like so, they're staring down, and every branch that he hits, their hats fly up with this boom sound, and so there's this. They're like, ooh, ooh, as they watch him fall all the way to the ground, and it's just a real silly, fun slapstick stuff, and it's actually it really makes for a fun moment. Yeah, there it is. You're like, oh, and he hits another branch. Ow, kind of fun.
Well, and the one dude's hat has a hole in the top. What's up with that?
Yeah, he's got one of those visors.
I mean, I guess, yeah. But I mean, yeah, it's they are fun. It is a fun bit. I do also like when I feel like this was kind of the precursor to the vulture scene in the Jungle Book,
Mm-hmm.
where they're just like,
Mm-hmm.
it's
Or any pigeons or bird scenes in Pixar movies.
yeah, they're
These.
just it's separate. It's weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so he learns to fly from them. They go back to the circus. The clowns have put him up at 1,000 feet, which is gonna kill him if they didn't know he could fly. It's gonna kill him. They don't know he can fly. And so it seems like
Yes.
we're about to, if you came to the circus that day, you were about to see elephant murder. I mean, I'm just saying, like, if you put them up, they had this breakaway, like, trampoline that was going to
With a
happen,
tank
and
of
he's going to,
water.
what? Like, that's
Yeah.
nuts. And so if
And
he hadn't done that,
100 feet up, something like that. It was crazy.
yeah, I think they were going for 1,000, because I mean,
1,000. Yeah.
yeah, and he
That's
loses
ridiculous.
his feather, and he's freaking out, and Timothy's like, real quick, hey, he's like, you can do this, but look, I mean, they're still falling. It's got to be the 1,000 feet, like. Yeah, it's nuts. And again, we're about to see elephant murder here because they're going to make him do this if they didn't know he could fly.
It's
So,
terrible.
I mean, again, I know it's a cartoon. I get it. I understand that. But like I've said a million times before, like when I watch something, there has to be rules. And if you set the rules in motion ahead of time, yes, Odin is from another universe, and that's why he can set all these things in motion and make rules for his for Thor and all this other stuff. Okay, you've set the rules in motion. The fact that they're going to drop an elephant 1,000 feet into a small bucket of water is not okay. And so I'm just saying that's a problem. But he gets even with everybody. He spits peanuts at the elephants that were mean to him and his mom. He gets a deluxe train car with that he
Yeah, that's
sets his
pretty
mom up with a
snazzy,
nice
huh?
house. Yeah,
Right? He gets a nice
it's it.
private car, the caboose and the train. Good for Dumbo.
He's living the dream. He is living the dream. So,
He has to keep his name though. He doesn't get to change his name like most celebrities.
but
He
he's
gets to
owned
be
it now.
Dumbo for the rest of his
He's
life.
owned it
Yeah.
now. Yeah. Fire Chief 66 in the chat just said, "Who sets a fire in a flammable tent?"
Thank you. Thank you. All of that seemed wrong to me.
Yeah. Jarrett said the circus is cruel. Let's be honest. There is, yeah, like I said, there's a lot of problems with
Yeah.
this one, but yet, let's move on to like it's happily ever after. This movie is over. It was a one and done. There were never really any sequels to this movie,
Hmm.
except there was a bizarre TV show. Are you familiar with
Oh,
the TV
I didn't
show?
know this.
Um,
I did not know there was a Dumbo show.
it was on the Disney Channel. Uh, so it was called Dumbo's Circus, and there was a Winnie the Pooh show on the Disney Channel that was a puppet show. Not a puppet show. There was like characters in sort of like Jim Henson-y puppets outfits, and so they made this Dumbo Circus as a spin-off sort of series where they used
Whoa.
Dumbo, and Dumbo was like a character, and then they didn't use any of the other characters from Dumbo. They created all new characters for Dumbo. It had 115 episodes in one season, and then no one knows where it is anymore. Like there are a few episodes online. It's very, you talk about trippy. It's very trippy.
Wait, show
And
that.
it,
Can you show that slide again? Because
yeah.
like I vaguely recognize the monkey and the cat and Dumbo. I think I've seen this show.
Yeah, it's crazy,
I'm
right?
bringing up
Yeah.
of childhood nightmares now. That is weird.
Well, again, there was a Winnie the Pooh show that was kind of like this, where Winnie the Pooh and his friends were they were walk-arounds. There was a later one where they were puppets, but there was a Winnie the Pooh. Uh, I'm gonna see if I
Oh,
can
you
find
blew
that
my
one
mind
too.
with that.
Okay, so here's what the Winnie the Pooh one looked like, what the Winnie the Pooh himself looked like, and then there's the Dumbo, and then here's
Oh my God.
the. I know, right? Are you having nightmares?
What is that? Is that a cat?
Yeah, that last one's a cat. Yeah, crazy, right? But anyway, Dumbo Circus is not on Disney Plus. And as a matter of fact, there was a lot of questions of it. There was 115 episodes. Some people that have only found 114 titles, and then of those titles, only like a handful of them are available if you look them up on YouTube because these seem to be gone forever. Like that was one of the things I was looking forward to most about Disney Plus is that they would have all of this stuff and put it all out there, and so I could see all those crappy 1990s Wonderful World of Disney remakes of The Absent-Minded
Oh yeah.
Professor and the Computer Wore Tennis Shoes with Kirk Cameron and all those. Those aren't on here. Like it seems like all of this stuff should exist somewhere, and yet apparently this one doesn't. But Dumbo Circus was supposed to be sort of a continuation where Dumbo's in a different circus, and then there's a different ringmaster, and so that's where this came from. And then, of course, there was the live action Dumbo that came out. That it's definitely a different vibe. I think actually no, it was Danny DeVito. I think was the ringmaster, but Colin Farrell's in it. But it was Danny DeVito, Michael Keaton, Colin Farrell, Alan
Yeah,
Arkin.
great cast.
Yeah, but I saw it once. I'm not really sure I need to see it again.
I love Tim Burton. I'm a
I do
big
too.
fan of many of his movies. Every Halloween to Christmas, we celebrate Nightmare Before Christmas, and we just kind of celebrate from October through December. But I have zero desire to see that movie because I don't want to see what they did to the movie I remember as a kid. So that's why it was funny. I was going through Disney Plus and I was going to find Dumbo to watch, and I saw that there were two, and I thought, oh, I don't know that I was clear that I wanted to watch the 1941 Dumbo, and I'm glad that we are. And I'm sure at some point you'll review the Tim Burton one,
Will we though?
but yeah, that's it's a different movie. It's not even a remake. It's a totally different film,
Yeah.
and I'm sure it's great, but I'm good.
Uh, and then, uh, and then, of course, there's the parks, right? So we talked a little bit about Disneyland. If you get into Disneyland, you go into Fantasyland. At the back of Fantasyland is the Dumbo attraction, and then behind that is Casey Jr. Being in the Dumbo attraction was always like a rite of passage. Do you like remember as a kid the first time that you rode on Dumbo, or is that
The
something you
first
just
time I
did
was
later in
tall
life?
enough, I was able to go and ride the ride alone. I remember the Dumbo ride. It was, of course, was one of the first rides I ever rode at Disneyland. I think it's because it was the safest. It was the only one that wasn't scary, and the fact that you could control Dumbo going up and down with your own joystick. I thought that was just awesome.
Yeah, and I don't think it
There it
ever
is.
occurred to me
Oh
that
man.
it's Dumbo like in his clown uniform. I don't think that occurred to me until I was watching it tonight. So you can see Timothy Q. Mouse in the very middle on his little balloon and kind of orchestrating the whole
Mhm.
thing, and then it's Dumbo in his clown uniform with the collar and the hat, and flying around. So yeah, it was definitely I feel like a rite of passage for so many people to have that be their first attraction or to ride in that or to have their picture taken in that. The one at Disney World is now off to the side in a new area that they call Storybook Circus, and it's the double
Hmm.
Dumbo. They've got two of the Dumbos instead of just the one, and then there's a little queue area that has an inside circus tent with places for the kids to play, and then they call you when it's your
Cool.
time to ride, which is kind
That's
of
fun.
neat. But I feel like moving it over to the side is taking the to me a little bit of the magic out of it when it was right there in the middle of Fantasyland and you're a little kid because now it's
Yeah.
over to the side and you have to find it. But when you get there, there's a company called Cincy that is doing a Smellephants on Parade attraction that is coming soon, where they're going to have the wacky elephants and they're all going to have different scents and you're going to go around and collect or like a scavenger hunt. So I'm looking forward to that. If you look in the ground there's like peanut shells and things, and so it definitely feels like a little bit of a circus. And then the Casey Jr. train is there in like a splash zone instead of like the train we have at Disneyland. And
Uh,
so I
okay.
mean, Dumbo's definitely left his mark on the parks.
Hmm.
So
For this in between movie that only cost $700,000 and less than a year to make, it for me it never felt like an afterthought or like a rush to print. it always felt like a major part of the Disney franchise. And so, when I look back and I learn about the history of it, it's surprising that it was so well received. And even as I look back on it and I'm critical of it here as an adult, it's like, God, that was such a great part of my childhood. And whatever we say today, I'm still going to enjoy Dumbo because I enjoyed it so much as a kid.
Yeah. Ronald said it made almost $1 million back in 1941. I mean, it's considered one of the big classics and one of those first 5 movies that Walt was putting together, and so it's kind of a big deal and part of the legacy of Disney. And we're going to answer the question right now, or in a minute, as to whether you would recommend it. But let me ask you: is there anything else you want to talk about before we get to final thoughts on this one, my friend?
I think we talked this one to death. We did a lot of analyzing with the film, and maybe so much so, or too much so. Sometimes you just have to take a piece of art for what it is. It's just a piece of art. It was something that was created in a rush to fill a need, to serve a purpose. I think I read somewhere that the plan was to release Bambi before this one, but because they just needed to make some cash, they had to get this one out. But for being such a rushed job, it's like, it's still really good. And, Disney's, that just shows you how magical Disney is when he was working on these projects. His little bit of influence and his ability to assemble really creative people can create something that has such a lasting effect on the entire brand and on entire, generations of humans. Yeah. And still at the same time, have problems, when you talk about the racism and the undertones in the film. I think all of that together just kind of, encompasses what we all went through as kids. It's like, this is what it was like growing up when we grew up.
Yeah. You know what I will say though, and I get what you're saying about like appreciate art for art, but I feel like when we do a show like this and we put it up in a pedestal and you and I have a conversation about it and we just kind of look at it for a minute, I look at it in a completely different way. And I think there's a good thing, whether it's a great movie or a not so great movie, if it's part of the Disney legacy, which is a company and a vibe and a community that I love. I love going back to something like this that I can go, you know what? Yeah, I've seen Dumbo, but then I go back and watch it because you and I are going to talk about it. I go, have I seen Dumbo? Like, it gives me a chance to really kind of get back into it, and then also experiencing it as an adult and then going, wait a minute, there's a lot of stuff about here I didn't catch before. To me is a really cool way to go back and experience these things again. And like you and Lauren and I did Fox and the Hound. That was a big movie for me as a kid, and going back to it and seeing it through a different set of eyes. I don't know that I would have done that had it not been for us having the opportunity to come and talk about it on the show. So I get what you're saying, but also I think that it actually brings a little bit more value to it when we can kind of get in there. Even if we're talking about this really trippy, weird, drug-soaked like scene that happens at the end, it's like my mother would have joked about like that all these people on drugs, like, let's make some magic, folks. It's like, I don't know. So before we get to the final thoughts, I do want to say thank you to our WIGS members. We love our WIGS, the WDWNT Interglobe Society. That is our Patreon group. If you want more information about it, go to patreon.com/WDWNT. Coming up on Deep in the Plus, last week we did Mrs. Doubtfire with Allison. This week it's with Maleko and Dumbo. Next week, Desi and I are going to talk about Echo the series, and then on February 7th, Herbie goes to Monte Carlo, and we're going to have Patrick on talking about
movie.
Herbie. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a good time. And so, again, you, my friend, you and I are going to have to find another movie to watch, start talking about it, thinking about it. I want it to be something that you love, that brings joy to you, that we haven't seen, that we haven't talked about already.
Okay. And you've talked about so many. I went through your library. There's over 100. How many have you done?
We're very close to 200 reviews. Yeah, we were close to 200 reviews. Yeah, we've been doing this since the day that Disney Plus launched. We've missed a few.
Amazing.
We've missed a few, but yeah, and it's a lot of fun. We almost every single Wednesday. We did skip some, or like one right in the holiday season, but almost every single Wednesday. So it's great again to have you on, my friend, and talking about Lilo and Stitch and Moana and Mary Poppins and Fox and the Hound and Turner and Hooch and Oliver and Company and now Dumbo. You've done a lot. And so I appreciate you doing them.
Yeah. No, I appreciate being able to be on the show. I like talking about these movies, and I love having an excuse to go back and go through the Disney Plus library. So it's fun.
All right, my friend, this is it. This is the moment that we've all been waiting for. We've picked this apart. You've relived your childhood. You've gone on the acid trip that is Pink Elephants on Parade, but now is the time. I need to know, my friend, would you recommend this movie?
You know, I absolutely have to say I would, because it's important in the Disney library. If you're a Disney fan at all, whether it's, you know, a big fan of Mickey Mouse, or whether you're just a fan of Winnie the Pooh, or whether you just love everything Disney, you cannot appreciate the Disney family of movies, the Disney animation history, unless you go back to movies like Dumbo and Pinocchio and Bambi, and really look at the beginning of where their animation started, because I think it really just sets up the tone for how magical Disney really is when he takes a story and he rolls it out in this magical way. You know, as a 6-year-old looking at this movie, it was incredibly fun and entertaining for me to watch. So much so that I remember watching it over and over and over again. And I think that any movie that has that sort of standing ability, or that ability to capture the mind of a 6-year-old, is definitely worth recommending. And I would show it to your 6-year-old today. And if they had questions about some of the bullying and the racism and some of the things that are just patently wrong with the movie, then and today, then that's a good parenting moment. That's a good opportunity for you to have a discussion with your child that's really going to help them progress as humans.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think that everything you just said is absolutely true, that it's a chance to go back and have them watch this, not just put it on as screen time and not really pay attention to it, but watch it with them and answer any questions that they have about it, and kind of learn from it. I mean, we learn from history, and so this is a piece of history, and I loved digging in deep to this one and finding out why it was made, what was the secret behind when it was made, all of those things. And it is one of the classics, and I always talk about, I don't love the sad movies, but those are the ones that bring all the emotion that we remember, that stay with us, whether it's Up or Bambi or Old Yeller or Dumbo. And it wasn't quite as sad as I remember in my head. It was much more sad, but I think it's definitely a cornerstone of Disney. And again, here we are celebrating 100 years of wonder. I think that everybody should see this movie, and it's an easy watch, as we've talked about. It's only an hour and 4 minutes long, and if you can share that with your kids and then go to the happiest place on earth or the most magical place on earth and ride in a Dumbo, it's going to mean so much more if they've seen the movie and they understand where it came from. So to me, that's the synergy right there, is to have those experiences with your family at the movie theater, at home, and then to go live those experiences at a Disney theme park. It's such a great marriage, and it's what keeps me just like a kid in this environment. As you know, I'm addicted to all of it, and so I can't wait to find a time to come out to Hawaii and go to Aulani and experience that. And then I also want to find a time where I can go and squat up with you and Lauren and us hang out at Disneyland. So put that on your calendar at some point.
I'm looking forward to that. That's going to happen soon. We try to make a trek to Disneyland at least once a year. We've been varying when we go. We've gone for some of the special nights. We've gone for some of the summer activities. And so one of these times, because I know you're at Disneyland every weekend, so I just want to plan a weekend where I'm there at the same time you are.
Yeah, let's make it happen. Awesome. Thank you, my friend, for doing this. I really appreciate it when you can do this. I know that you took time out of your busy day, and that means the world to me. So thank you so much. Thanks to everybody who's watching. We appreciate you joining us every week for Deep in the Plus. Go back and watch Park Center from last week. We had a great time hanging out, me, Desi, Patrick, and Stephanie. We're going to have another Park Center this Sunday night at 9 o'clock live. If you want to join us, we would love to have that. And otherwise, we'll see you next week for another episode of Deep in the Plus. Have a great week, everyone.
Aloha.